Oh, I know. I'm looking for Christelle. She's got to do this presentation. She's got a whole bunch of presentation to do.
Winging up.
We will move until she gets here.
Let's let Aaron wing it and see how far that goes.
I would like to call to order this December 12th, 2017 Finance Committee meeting. At this time, I'd ask Ken Dawson if he would lead us in the prayer, to be followed by the pledge. If you'll all stand, please.
Let us pray. Father, we thank you for all that you continue to do. We thank you for the season that we're in, and we ask for your continual blessings. We pray that this country would be safe with all the upheaval and all of the disagreements. We pray, Father, there would be unity, that we would come together as a nation, as a people, as a country. We thank you, Father, that the grace that you provided, even during this Christmas season, will be exemplified in our actions and our lives. Bless our families, bless our homes. Let the time that we spend together during this holiday season be one of enjoyment for each other, love that we can share with our friends and family and community. Let us bless and look upon those who are less fortunate and realize it is more blessed to give than it is to receive. Let us consider the gifts that we have and think about those that are less fortunate and somehow make a Christmas for them as well. We thank you again for all that you do and continue to do. Give us the wisdom to do the people's business tonight. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Everyone is present tonight with the exception of Councilman Turner. There are no chairs additions. I will mention that if you care to speak on an item on the agenda, you're welcome to sign a card. They are green ones and red ones, and if you will get those to the secretary, she will provide them to me. You will have 3 minutes to speak on any item. I'm going to have to skip item 5 and 6 until our presenter arrives. I think they've probably been held up in traffic if I had my guess. So I will begin with item number 7. Kate?
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right. Oh. Well,
It's coming.
presentation's coming. All right, so this is the handout that you have with you is we're going to do our quarterly report to close out 2017 and update you on the work that we have completed this quarter and this year. So wanted to start out. Oh, hold on, that's me. Okay, so I wanted to start out talking about our projects for 2017. There's a variety of different ways that we get our projects, which briefly summarize again is that we either generate them ourselves or we get them from the Baton Rouge Area Chamber or Louisiana Economic Development. So that's basically how they're filtered through site selection consultants or our partners. So in 2017, we received 21 requests for information from Louisiana Economic Development, and those are requests sent out that go to all of the economic development agencies in the state, and they basically describe a project that's looking to locate. And if you meet the needs as described in their request for information, then you can respond back with any of the sites listed in the Entergy database. So out of those 21, we had 10 sites, well, 10 that we could respond to. Some had multiple sites in Ascension Parish that met the needs of the project. And out of those 10, we were able to get 2 site visits to our parish. And those projects, one is looking at an alternative location and another one is still pending. And then we also had 12 projects that we originated from our office. 6 of those are expansion opportunities and 6 are recruitment opportunities. So that's either ones that we were able to assist by visiting with them, or ones that have called or walked into our office. So out of those 12 projects this year, we had 4 wins. And then we have the 6 that are still ongoing on our project tracker. So those wins, as you're aware of, we can now announce they were approved at the Board of Commerce and Industry this morning. So they are now going to the final step, which is the governor's desk for his final signature. So once that's complete, then the projects will be officially through the process. But we did secure 32 new jobs with an investment amount of $462 million this year through those 4 projects that are mentioned. So just so you kind of have some understanding, 87% of the projects were manufacturing. Some were chemical manufacturing, food manufacturing, auto manufacturing, but the majority coming still are in manufacturing. We are doing a lot to work on diversification, but just those are the majority that are coming through the pipeline at this time. So moving on to 2018, we still have a healthy, our anticipated goals. So another reminder, because I know I do this every time, is to talk about how we classify A, B, and C, because it does seem kind of fluid. A's are the projects that are most likely to come to a decision within the next 12 months. They're the ones that we're most actively working on. B's are the ones that maybe were really active at one time and then cooled off. And so we have updates on those, but they're not necessarily going to be making a decision anytime soon. And then C's are ones that we've answered RFIs on, or we've had site visits on, but went cold, and we haven't had a whole lot of updates with communication on those projects. So that's how we delineate the different projects that we're working on. But A's are usually the ones that we feel the most likely are going to announce in the short term. So we've got a bunch of those, which are good, 75 jobs and $2 billion in investment, and our overall is 1,300 jobs with $8 billion in potential investment that we'll be starting 2018 with. We've also continued to conduct our business retention and expansion visits. Lisa heads up our program. We have, I think, 47 visits as of today to try and close out our 50 for the year. And 2 scheduled, so we only need 1 more. But what we've learned from those meetings, so the meetings are confidential so that they can share with us their concerns about doing business, any information that is proprietary, and then we can take that data and put it in the aggregate. And so what we learned is that 55% of all the employees reside in Ascension, which is great. ITEP has been an ongoing concern for the manufacturers that we meet with. They're pleased overall with public safety and public services, and that traffic is going to be an ongoing problem as they continue to do business and also to plan expansions. We've also made a big focus on entrepreneurs and small business, so we leverage our partner networks to try and offer more for smaller businesses or the stage of business that isn't technically in an office space or a facility yet. So we partnered with the MBECA, the Micro Business Exchange Corporation, to open a LEAP Center at Lamar Dixon. They've started getting new tenants in place, so it's coming along slowly, but it's coming along, and that offers not only incubator space, but also training for finance for business, marketing for business, how to write a business plan. So that's great to have locally, and then we also participate and speak and hold workshops in conjunction with our partners throughout the year to try and provide resources to small businesses. We also have had, I want to say 4 small businesses in just the last 6 months that have come into our office that are looking to start a new business and are actually further along in the plan. One we sent to an incubator, the other one's looking to locate by the 3rd quarter of next year. So we're starting off getting a lot more activity from small business and entrepreneurs. One of the key focuses this year was on the mega park in the West Bank in Modest. And so what we did is we had our annual stakeholder meeting, and I say it's annual because now it's an ongoing thing that we're going to conduct, where the property owners come out and we give them an update on what we've been doing for marketing, where we're at with the overlay, the industrial overlay that was renewed this year, and then also what our plans are for the future, and making sure that they're still on agreement to continue with this concept of this mega park. The good news for 2017 is we were shortlisted on 2 major projects for that site. So one came to visit, the other one changed their mind at the last minute after we filled out a very lengthy RFI. But it's just a good sign that there is activity interested. There aren't many sites along the Mississippi River remaining, so this is why we feel this is an important place to continue putting our resources into cultivating. So we also had a top site selection consultant come in, and we reviewed the site with him to figure out what other challenges we needed to overcome before some other site selectors like him would feel comfortable bringing a project to the park. So with that in mind, we set up some meetings for and goals for the first quarter of 2018 to work with the railroad and the port to really solidify some right-of-ways as it would pertain to utilizing that site. And then we're going to create a website. It's basically a microsite of our site to dedicate just to the Riverplex Mega Park, hardest name ever. So that it has its own dedicated interactive site where people who are interested in locating can play with the layout of the 17,000 acres to kind of manipulate it to see where it'd be best for them to carve out a piece. In conjunction with that, we recognize that the largest user will not use 17,000 acres, but more around 1,000 to 2,000, and that person will most likely be funded from another country with capital. So we're working with LED on a foreign direct investment strategy to reach out to the correct markets in order to get some of that foreign capital interested in our site. In this quarter, back in November, we had our AEDC board retreat, and we discussed our 2018 program of work, which is what we update you on quarterly, is where we're at with the program of work. It was drafted. It should be approved in the first quarter. We discussed it at that retreat. And the major strategic initiatives that are coming out of it for next year is the Riverplex Mega Park, the ITEP program, clarifying our process and actually getting it moving in a smooth manner moving forward, and then focusing on our business retention and extension program. And that's our update for tonight. And thank you for working with us, and especially thank you this year with the changes in the ITEP, that you've been patient and have made it through all that, and hopefully it will get better. So we are working to make that process better and easier for everyone. So we really appreciate you for sticking with us on that.
Thank you, Kate. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Mr. Joseph?
Yes, I have I have two really, but one of them is with new companies or new industry coming into the parish. And I seen you say we had 21 from LED and we had 10 responses, but only 2 site visits. Have you looked at in the past, are we losing more customers that looking for our community, or are we gaining more? Because, I mean, with 2 site visits, that mean, you know, that's not, for new industry, that's kind of hard. St. James, I know they had bunch, and we only had 2, you know. So can you elaborate on that, why, and beside traffic?
I can elaborate on what my best guess is, because they don't tell us most of the time what it is. Sometimes they do, and I know the one project, they didn't want our site because it didn't have direct water access, and so they wanted a site that was at the port so it would be easier for them to handle the materials. One of the other projects, it was a non-attainment issue, so we lost in environmental regulations. And I think it's really the big ones that we compete most closely with St. James on. So that's where we know more often when we got cut off the short list, but they're still in it. And then we know within the region, because the Baton Rouge Area Chamber is involved, so we know when we get cut, but somebody else in our region is still on it. I know we just lost another one to Tangipahoa, and that had to do with land price. So it's hard to really know. There isn't ever really a reason, but it actually looks bad on the number that come in from LED, but that's a pretty good number compared to most parishes to even make it that far. But it's also interesting to notice that the majority of the projects are coming from in-house and not from the state's RFI process.
Well, that's the only point. I'm looking for new, I guess, you know, we had 17,000 acres and we look for new clients.
I know.
In-house, that's fine. I accept that. All right. The other thing I want to comment on, want to thank you for looking at the small business entrepreneurs program and bringing that on board. I hope we keep that up and start giving us a better update on that so we can start looking out for our small business people in-house. Thank you.
Mr. Dawson.
Well, thank you, Kate and Lisa. I wanted, if you don't mind, Kate, I'd like for you to go through this process just briefly, a short tutorial on when a prospect comes to LED or they come to us. Let's say they come to LED and it's a major prospect and they're looking at going to the West Bank. How do these project names, how does that play into it, and at what point does that come to us for, you know, a decision on ITEP? And I know it's maybe that sounds like a lot of stuff, but if you could briefly just kind of go through that process and talk about how that offer is made. And
Okay, so if they come through LED, they contact us and say, we have a consultant or we have a client that's interested in a specific site in your parish. And so they arrange to have a visit, and so we go on the visit with them. So when we did have the last project it looked at, the West Bank specifically, they actually did a helicopter tour the day before, and then we took them in the car on the ground the next day because it's a lot to see. So on a big project, it's easier to do an aerial tour and then to do the road tour. After that, they get to narrow it down again. So if we make it, say that we make it from the list of 6 to the list of 3 sites, and that's saying that these sites could be in Texas, they could be in Kansas, it doesn't matter. So they're still visiting all the same 3. So the next phase, we're looking at the project economics. So not only did we already run the company to make sure they're valid, but then also we're looking at what the project's going to bring specifically. So that's when they start asking about what incentive programs, because they're still looking at this list of 6 or 3 or 2 or however they've narrowed it down at this point to see financially which site makes the most sense. Because at that point, they've already looked at infrastructure, attainment, all these issues, and it becomes a financial game at that point because attainment and wetlands mitigation, it all just has a financial number. So it's not that it's impossible, it just costs more. So they're looking at the project as a spreadsheet, and we're looking at the project of how can we still maximize the benefit and what can we do to win that project based on these finances. So at that point, we're looking at how we can compare on that spreadsheet to win the project and also win the best possible ROI for the parish and the state. And the state can leverage discretionary incentives at that point if Ascension is the only location in contention, if there isn't another location in the state, because then they have to offer the same package for both spots in the state. And then at that point, we'll start this process locally, but the state has a project code name, and we have a project code name, and they're different project code names, even though we know each other's code names, because for confidentiality purposes, we don't want to know who the leak is. So if it's locally, then we'll know. If it's the state, then they would know. But the importance of the code name is that if it's a publicly traded company, there's issues with releasing the name with insider trading problems. There's also issues if they're shutting down another location and they're looking to move to the southeast from the northeast, then you have union issues, you have employees that are going to figure out they're looking, and this is all before they've decided where they're going to go. So that creates a very poor working environment for their local company, because if they end up not moving, then all of a sudden you've stirred up a whole lot of trouble at your workplace. So there's reasons why companies don't want to be named. There's also the competitive issues, but that's not even the main reason. Because it's usually a supply and demand by the time they've already decided on a move or a new location. So at that point, we try to keep them confidential as long as possible so that they've already made their decision, and we've been able to make sure we have offered them what they can actually receive. And then with the state, the discretionary incentives become invalid if the company name is revealed before they reveal it. So there's multiple layers that go through the process. And then when it's all said and done, the governor's office is the first one to release the information, and then we get the big yay because everyone gets excited about the new company coming in. So that's kind of how that process works. That's why the code names are important. We usually sign the non-disclosure agreements, and so we keep basically everybody who is a local governing authority in the loop with all the information minus the name of the company. So that's the best we can do. And sometimes we can't describe the actual product name if it would give away who the company is, but we can explain everything we can around that. So we don't withhold any information other than the actual name of the company.
Thank you. Very good.
Thank you. Any other, Madam Secretary, if you'll note, please, that Councilman Turner has arrived. And are there any questions? Anyone else on that side? Mr. Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I notice on your visits, the traffic is an ongoing concern. As most of these businesses are located on Highway 30, and we adding a new lane out there, hopefully we'll want to see that back on here again. But it should help
Yes.
relieve some of the congestion out there, so.
They were
for the best.
excited about the new lane. They definitely were appreciative of the new turning lane. And I think they've also been trying to work out individually with the larger plants of how to stagger traffic and how to bring in contract workers utilizing Lamar Dixon. So I know they're being creative, but, I mean, they're causing the traffic, so they understand, you know, it's
Appreciate
a
that,
headache.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. President.
I'm also working with plant managers on that road from Ashland to St. Landry that would give them out through 44.
Great.
So working on that
That would be
right now.
wonderful.
Thank you very much. All right, anyone else? Mr. Kluat?
Yeah, okay, thank you guys very much for coming here. And while we're talking about the new business and the big sites, I appreciate the dedication to the retention and working with the folks that are here. Because sometimes, depending on the product in the market, sometimes the businesses become stagnant. And so they need to tweak a little bit and, you know, keep themselves lively in the market. And so sincerely appreciate the look at the businesses that we do have, 20-something industrial complex we have. Keep working with them. And just like OJ said, thank y'all for the small business effort. We need to really move on that. On Forest Transportation, Highway 30, that Ashland lane's gonna help out. But we're still a long ways away from what we need is a 4-lane on Highway 30. Everybody working on that. That's not going to happen over there. We do have within the agencies in the chemical industry, they do meet and try to work out different work hours. Several of us up here work in the industry, and we know that they do try to work out. But you can only work within a half an hour to an hour sometimes. And so we're going to continue to work with that, and the sheriff's office does a good job of trying to keep everything safe, no matter how bad the traffic is. So appreciate the retention. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ladies, thank you for being here. All right, we will go back to item number 5 on our agenda. Estelle? We have been working together for a year now to accomplish some efficiencies and some better organization within our parish. The administration requested that this work be done. And so Dr. Slaughter and her team have helped us to accomplish several of the things that we had hoped for. And certainly we have 11 recommendations from her that were made early on in this process, and that frankly I had the expectation would become codified fairly quickly. And those things have been somewhat delayed, and so we are ready to start moving forward. And so, Dr. Slaughter, if you will introduce your team and give us a brief highlight of your credentials so that the public understands from whence you come and what this information that you are giving to us means to us.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My team, part of my team is caught between Gonzales and Baton Rouge because they did not believe what Google Maps said. The other part of the team believed what Google Maps said, and we're here. And one is coming from Sabine Parish, and I have no idea where he is, but they should be here. But I got it, so I got it under control, unless you ask hard questions, and then I need them desperately. Let me tell you what I need to present to you this evening. The way the item is listed on the agenda is a little bit incomplete. We were asked to amend our contract to take care of consolidating job titles as well as to finalizing a pay plan. That is the most important thing that we want to talk to you about, is our work with that and where that is. It does relate to an organization structure, and so that is part of the presentation. But the reality is, the most important thing is that this council must adopt the job titles and the commensurate pay plan that goes along with that. And that was part of our job study in the beginning, the compensation study, affected by the efficiency study. And so, again, that's what we are first bringing forward today. So I believe we have a presentation. Is it up there? Thank you. John, what am I doing wrong? There we go. Got it. Thank you. As I just mentioned, we went back into the charter and ordinances to try and see what your personnel director was required to provide to you. Thank you so much. As well as what your current laws ask you to do in regard to this. I think your last pay plan might have been adopted in 2009 as a comprehensive pay plan and has been then amended through cost of living raises and things like that since then. We are bringing you job title consolidation recommendations, and some of you very much want a more clear paths for progression for employees within the parish, since so many of them stay with you for most of their career, if not their whole career. Recommendations for the labor grade, market match salaries, and then what we believe are stipulations about departments, offices, and agencies, and our recommendations for the names of those which seem to drift somehow. And again, these are all recommendations to you and your staff for consideration. A final list of department heads and labor grades is included. As part of that, it is not complete until you determine your organization chart and then a proposed organization chart. So let me start with direction on the personnel director, because I think this is very important. Your charter says that the personnel director shall submit to the president all proposed rules, regulations, and procedures required in accordance with subsection D above. Subsection D is very broad and has a number of different elements to it. And the president shall submit the proposed rules, regulations, and procedures with or without the president's amendments to the governing authority, this parish council. The governing authority may amend the proposed rules, regulations, and procedures, and they shall become effective only upon adoption by the governing authority by ordinance in accordance with Section 6. The reason why I thought this is very important, we thought this is very important to bring to you, is that some people think because you passed a resolution after our first report that changes have been made. As far as I know, the only changes that have been made were the people, 6 or however many there were, who were below market were moved into the ranges. But no changes have been made or will be made, I believe, until something comes to you in the form of an ordinance that contains this information, or at least approves a certain packet of information to put this into effect. So to do that, you have got to have clear job titles, where those job titles fall within the labor grades, and market matches for those labor grades. So we feel very responsible that this is done by the book in the way that it should be done. We've worked very hard with Ms. Wesley. She's been just wonderfully cooperative in trying to gather information. We've met with your department heads, except for the snow day, which kind of came unexpectedly and meant that we had to reschedule or cancel some of those meetings. But I think what we bring to you tonight has been well received and is pretty close to what you need to adopt. So what you told us, and you were absolutely right, and what people inside of parish administration told us was for job titles, the problem was we had a lot of one-off job titles. We had a lot of titles that had just sprung up over the years. One department called this the, utilities secretary, and another one called it the public works secretary, and that some of them had single incumbents or very few incumbents. And so when you looked at the list of job titles, you saw many that were very department specific, and it was going to be very hard for someone to figure out where could my career go with Ascension Parish. I'm in this department, a very specific job title, but I see that there's a position open over there. How would I be able to move? So with that, what we did was talk with your existing department heads and people who are in the position to really understand the structure and what they need. There are a few new positions and changes that are being proposed in human resources, in transportation and engineering. We just gathered those within the past week or so. So those are not included, but just about everything else is included. You asked us to look at the title Senior Project Manager. There were 10 people with that title. There were 3 people with the Project Manager title. All will receive new titles reflecting their job responsibilities. They are scattered throughout various departments. And in the future, those titles would be reserved for true project managers. Probably you would find them mostly in public works or information technology. The general manager title will be eliminated, and there are a number of titles that have not been in use that we will recommend to your personnel director or your human resources director to eliminate before you actually adopt the plan. So what is the progress we have made on that? So we have clearly identified opportunities for progression, and as I said earlier, within a department and between departments, we identified 61 positions that can be consolidated into 15 new positions representing 7 job families. Now, you're getting an example of, or you're getting the actual list so that you can see the crosswalk from the new titles to the old titles, vice versa. This means that 289, or about 54% of your employees, will be given a new title and an opportunity for career progression once this is adopted by you. If this is adopted, once it's adopted. So I'm going to give everybody a chance to look at that, see if there are any questions. For those who may not have a copy of this, there are new titles such as accountant, which would combine accountant 1 and 2, administrative specialist, which would have 3 levels, and that would take in everything from clerks to secretary 1s to receptionists to office managers, to council secretaries, to customer service representatives. Buyers would be consolidated, counselors would be consolidated. The one that I was most excited about, because we see this problem in many municipalities and parish organizations, is the maintenance technician series. So we're recommending that you adopt a maintenance technician 1, 2, and 3. And that would take in everything from a grass cutter and an operator 1, and a laborer, parts runner, yard operator, which would all be maintenance technician 1s, similar minimum qualifications and job requirements. Your 2s would have a slightly higher level, and that would be your drivers, driver 2s and operator 2s, part maintenance technician, etc. And then your maintenance technician 3s would be, the driver 2 would be a maintenance technician 3 as well as the operator 3. And you would have a maintenance technician 4 position, which would encompass the former operator 4 position. So what this means is that someone can come to you basically as a laborer, basically unskilled. And then as they learn things, as they progress, then they could move from one part of Public Works to another part of Public Works. They could move really to any department. They could go into building maintenance or somewhere else, facilities maintenance. And it really does provide a clear route for progression. The other series that we think will really help you is the supervisory series. You had everything from foremen to supervisors and even some low-level managers in this series before, and those would be consolidated into supervisory family supervisors 1, 2, and 3. So again, we believe that this is about a 31% reduction of job titles. We didn't rerun those numbers today, but when we ran them yesterday, it was 31%, and about 54% of your employees are incumbents of those positions. So it's a significant number of people who would have clear job progression lines. I'm not sure if there are any questions or people would like me to keep moving.
I think that I would bow to the judgment of the council if you want to be asking questions intermittently, or if you would like to hold your questions until the end.
And wait till the end.
All right, OJ, who had a question, we'll wait till the end.
Right.
Thank you, OJ,
Thank
very
you.
much.
Let me talk a little bit about your pay plan recommendations. What we are providing on this handout to you is the original position title in your pay plan right now, the new position title, if there is one, and if we have that title, the current labor grade, the new labor grade, and then the old range minimum and max, and the new labor grade minimum and max. So I'm going to let everybody get a copy of that. And again, there may be a few positions which we have not been able to rate because we do not have a job analysis questionnaire and a job description that we feel accurately represents that position. It is but a handful of positions, some of which we visited with Ken Dawson and William Daniel yesterday. There are a couple of positions in transportation and engineering, as I said, and Ms. Wesley had some positions that would be helpful in human resources. You do have other people who, for example, in planning and development, as you look forward with that area in parish government, I think over the next 2 years, there's some opportunities for specialization and bringing in people with certifications who can help you with some of your planning and zoning issues, but that's sort of on the drawing board. At some point, we give this to you, we work it one last time with you and or administration, and then once you adopt it, then it would be your staff who would make those adjustments for you as they come along, and we suggest that those come to you for approval as they do. There is one other salary that we talked a little bit about but had not brought you specific information on, and that is the parish president's salary. This is always a delicate topic, and we have had a number of our clients who are uncomfortable talking about it. We think that it is prudent to talk about it, and we think that it is prudent to talk about it in a public situation. And what we have provided you in this handout is research that we have drawn from 10 different parishes and how they determine what their parish president, 11, what their parish president earned with the parish president that was at the time of the research, and how it is determined. And some of them have them tied to, for example, West Baton Rouge, highest base salaries of the parish sheriff, assessor, and clerk of court, whatever's the highest. That is reflected in some of the other ones. When you get to other parishes, they are, tied to either one particular formula or have to do with some annual or periodic look. I will tell you that it is very easy to have your parish president's salary fall way behind, and it becomes very difficult and politically tough at certain times to then raise that pay. Why is this important? Because you're starting to bring in talented people, and if your parish president's salary is not high enough, you experience what we saw in East Baton Rouge Parish, which is we had talented people being brought in at a higher level than the parish president's salary, or the mayor president's salary, and that was a very challenging situation. So we do not give you one recommendation. We give you this for perusal. We are happy to make a recommendation. I believe the parish president's salary is $148,000 right now. Is that correct? I think so. So at the moment, I think it is higher, but it will not stay that way forever. A couple more items. Your charter stipulates departments, offices, and agencies. As we have worked with you, we have noticed a drift, if you will, of the actual titles of the departments. Did we bring that? Maybe I pulled it up by mistake. We actually presented at one of, I think it was a special finance committee meeting, and in a moment of exuberance, when we visited your website a couple of days later, there were new things on the website. And so we've got to contain that, and we have to call things the same thing, and we believe that you should adopt that, whatever the title of that department, office, or agency is, and that you should stick with it, and it should be reflected in the budget. It is very hard for us to do a table of organization for you right now. One of the council members said, I want to know how many people are in each department, in each subdivision of that department. That is a very worthy question. When we had a screenshot, I decided that it was impossible to see. But and we may not. Oh, here it is. Thank you. Told you not to give them to me. When we look at where employees are listed, sometimes it's very clear they're listed in finance or DPW. Sometimes they are listed in some generic format, so it's almost impossible for us to tell exactly where they are. We're going to try and get that information, and after we talk about organization structures, then we can try and figure out how we could actually tack down how many people are where. And I'll come back to that point in a minute. So I think people now have recommended title listings. You have 5 departments that are specified either in your charter or in ordinance. Your human resources department is specified in your charter, but finance, planning and development, utilities, and public works are specified in ordinance. We believe that you should have departments that reflect the colloquial name that people are calling them. So, for example, you would have a department that is called Lamar Dixon. You would have a department that's called Recreation, or an office, depending on where that is in the organization structure. Homeland Security and Office of Emergency Preparedness. We hear some people call it OEP. We hear some people call it Homeland Security. That one's a little challenging. It's quite long, but we think you need to just set the name in stone for the time being. We have an infrastructure division because we grouped things under that position in an earlier conversation, and that seems to have stuck. There's grants, purchasing. It looks like you are going to have the need for a code enforcement office or some sort of agency at some point in the near future. information technology, mosquito control, communications, health unit, and that assumes that mental health is under the health unit. I believe there is a reporting relationship there now. Even though there is a board for mental health, it's more in an advisory capacity, as we are informed. Animal control, probably one of the most confusing. You have two names that are extremely confusing to people. And one comes out as maintenance. Sometimes it has the word building associated with it, sometimes it doesn't. We've had people ask us if that's street maintenance. Is that road maintenance? Is that building maintenance? Some people called it custodians. The jail is under there. So in some versions that we brought to you, we actually have a box that says jail. That's really not a thing. There are some people who clean the jail, and they are your employees, and they need to be in that facilities maintenance or building maintenance category. We think facilities maintenance. Look, this isn't composed of people who just clean things. These people do serious maintenance for you and for a lot of facilities and your partners' facilities. So we think it's important that it has a name that reflects that. Transportation and engineering, pavement management, vegetation management. And I can't tell you how many people said, well, where's fleet? And part of that is because it was called site and equipment management, maintenance, management, whatever. We think it needs to be called fleet and equipment maintenance. You're not taking care of all your fleet needs internally. That doesn't matter. You need a group that is responsible, and the title reflects what they're doing actually in there, which is maintaining some very expensive equipment that the parish owns, and even if fleet maintenance is outsourced, it's done that way. And then finally, drainage. Drainage is a very confusing topic. You do maintenance in drainage. You will also probably be doing some capital projects or major drainage work more in the future. And you have a drainage board and you have a dedicated tax. So we think that if that area is called drainage, then that would include both the day-to-day drainage efforts that are done by your DPW crews, as well as larger efforts that may also relate to transportation and engineering. But again, there would be that tie back to the drainage boards. So as we begin to pull this together, we want to bring you or get to you, hopefully. We think we're extremely close, except for those new positions. You have one more meeting in December, a council meeting in December. If we can get agreement on that from staff and get your feedback tonight, then we'll be able to give that back to you, and then you could possibly adopt it in January. January is a great time to adopt things. We think that between the definition of the titles of the departments, offices, and agencies, and an organization structure, and then a pay plan with consolidated job titles, that you're going to have everything you need to move forward. In our 11 priority recommendations, the further we go, the further we work with you, the more important it seems to us that you have a budget that is transparent and reflective of the department names, offices, agencies, and the budget should become your tool as the parish council for being able to provide good governance for the citizens. It should be transparent, and you should be able to understand it and note changes and be proactive in that. So you can't really do that until we have these other elements. Many organizations, including the state of Louisiana, develop what they call a TO, a table of organization. And so in a department or office or agency, you would be able to tell where are the major positions, where's the leadership, how many employees there are. It is usually adopted into ordinance or as part of a budget, and there's an identified process for changing the TO. So where we've watched you sort of get into interesting situations is you do not have that process. You have a situation where as long as there is an existing job title, then positions and individuals can be added without council knowledge. I've told you before, we've not seen anything like that before. This is a recommendation for you to consider, that you would develop a process internally for adding positions to a table of organization for a department or for the entire parish government, where the department head or whoever is coming forward with the request would prepare that and justification. And that would go through an internal approval process. It would go through Human Resources, Finance, and the parish president, and they sign off on that. The request must be approved by the Personnel Board. That's done in a lot of other areas. I don't think you've used your Personnel Board that way much in the past, but it seems like there needs to be sort of another level of scrutiny before it comes to the council. You end up being put a little bit on the hot seat between a department head who's coming before you and asking to add positions or jobs or whatever, without someone else sort of asking questions before it comes to you. But ultimately, it would have to be changed by the parish council. There are some places where it is very, very difficult to do that because it has such important budget implications. Some places it's easier than others, but you just don't have that. We made a note that any existing position, if somebody leaves, they're transferred, they're promoted, and that's an existing position, and it's vacant, and somebody is put into that position, you don't need to be clattered up with those kinds of things. But anything that's an additional budget item, whether it's the same title or a different title or whatever, we think that that's just good governance that it comes to you. I think there are a couple other things that I have that are from your charter and ordinances, but I think we'll just deal with those if they come up, if there are questions. I think there's an organization chart. An organization chart? Can we get that? Is it? Oh, I have to do it from here. It's not on the. Okay. Bear with me. Just received this. So let's see if we can change. We can shift from the slides to the overhead projector. That'd be great. Does anybody want to talk about this? I think this was a group effort. I don't know if anybody in particular.
Can you minimize it, but it shows up on the screen?
This is all I have.
Is that tongue in cheek?
I think.
That's why.
I think, Councilman, we can maybe move from one side to the other. I think maybe go from the top down. So, can you
John, help.
make it
John,
smaller?
can you
John?
come out and help?
It's
He
gotta-
coming out.
Got to zoom in and zoom out.
Magnify her
Yeah.
back away.
There you go.
There we go.
Thank you.
There you go.
Perfect. That's good. Thank you.
Thank you, Draw.
There you go.
Thank you,
Okay.
both of you.
Yeah.
There you
Give that
go.
man a raise. Oh, wait.
So,
Has to be approved.
anybody want to? This is a
Crystal,
hybrid.
Move it up just a drop so we can see the legend and the public can too. A little bit more. There we go. Thank you.
Yeah. Reminds me of the old days teaching, right?
Does, doesn't it?
Okay.
New technology.
So we don't have public, well, yeah, we got it all. All right, it's all up there now. So legend says purple is elected officials, parish president and council. Red would be divisions, which does not show up in your charter or ordinance as a thing. But actually those are positions. They are not functions. So the chief operating officer to the left would then have orange departments reporting to him or her, and those would be Public Works. And under Public Works, there are offices that are outlined. One is called Capital Projects, one is called Pavement Maintenance, one is called Drainage Maintenance, one is called Equipment and Site, and one is called Vegetation. Then there is a department called Utilities, and an office called Transportation, and that would be the extent of the chief operating officer responsibilities. The parish president would have two departments in the middle that report to the parish president: Homeland Security and Finance, with grants reporting to Finance. And then on the right, you would have a chief administrative officer who would have planning and development, human resources, and Lamar Dixon, and also technology, communications, code enforcement, mosquito control, facility maintenance, recreation, health, purchasing, and animal control. And the asterisks denote new positions that are above a dotted line that says must be ratified above this line. I think that's, the council has council secretary and legislative under it as well. So I'm going to leave this up here, and we can make it larger or smaller as needed. Madam Chairwoman, that concludes my formal presentation, so happy to answer questions.
Thank you. The first one I have is that I believe you said we had no fleet. So is that where equipment and site becomes fleet and equipment maintenance? That would be your recommendation?
Yes, and I think that was a name change a while ago, but it's
Just
fleet.
Didn't manage itself onto this. Okay.
No, what I mean is that I think at one point it might have been called fleet.
Right.
And that's why people were looking for it. Where's fleet? So,
And it will again be called, if we were to adopt your recommendations, it would be called fleet and equipment maintenance.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
And that corresponds on this chart to what you see as equipment and site.
Right.
Okay, thank you. This rendition is rather new to, in fact, it's totally new to everyone who's sitting here. So I think we need to, look at it, wrap our minds around it, and then with regard to everything else you have proposed, I'm going to take questions from any councilman or any member of the committee who desires to ask a question. Mr. Oliver Joseph, you had a question early on.
She answered it in the question, the table of position.
Table of organization.
Table of organization and the total number of position. And that was one of my questions right there. I mean, in the past, the constituent always saying we went from 180 workers to 500 workers, but this way here, this would control it and base it, says, hey, if it's a maximum of 400 employees, that's what it is according with your budget.
Right.
I like that real good, so that way it does give accountability to the public, how many employees they have, and that's anything that comes up in the future, it would make everybody comfortable in approving something like that. We
Right.
approved Mr. William Daniel, and I don't think anybody had any problem with that. We needed it, so I like that table right
Good.
there.
I'm pleased to hear you say that. We were, and this is not meant to be disparaging of the first round of interviews that we did with your department heads, but we were very pleased this time when department heads came with suggestions and things that they thought, if we look into the future, here's some things that we think we could do differently or need or whatever. If you really want your people to feel empowered and give you 100% as they really want to do, be creative. Actually, some structure helps them do that. So if this is what I have in my salary pool, and two people leave, and I may be able to combine that or do something different with that, I can make creative decisions. Bless you. That need to be approved, but otherwise, it's a gray area as to how I would get resources, or who do I ask on what day. So.
And the other one was just to update that any disposition, anything have to be passed by ordinance. I mean, you know, that's a real enlightening to know sometime we forget about that, and bringing that back to front, I appreciate that part of it.
And you have a lot that's between the charter and your ordinances. Your blue book, which is your Bible, your personnel manual that we've talked about before, that you were hoping to get a human resources person who could come in and begin to start revising that. We have brought you before ideas on raises, cost of living raises, and merit and performance appraisal. Now you have someone who can actually implement those things, and all of that needs to go into that personnel manual that you all need to adopt. So what you have now was adopted, and so you are operating under something that really does need some revisions.
Okay.
But it's all part of that package.
Mr. Dawson?
Well, thank you, Christelle. I know you put a lot of long into this, sometimes outside the normal working hours. I appreciate that. You know, a couple of comments and questions. If I understood correctly, then what you're asking tonight is, or recommending tonight is that we make a motion to move this forward to the full council on the 21st. And at the 21st meeting, there'll be an opportunity to amend or update in any way, or between now and the 21st, there'll be an opportunity to draft up amendments or changes if necessary.
Yes.
On the 21st, adopt that as to start the ordinance process. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay. Secondly, I wanted to, we talked about ratification above that line, and I'm pleased with the way that came out. We also, I think, we're lacking in the process for ratification. I'd like to, maybe hear your thoughts on that too.
We have sketched out a procedure for that, and
Okay.
We can get that to you in writing. But we thought that it was very interesting, and we couldn't find it, and maybe legal counsel can tell us where it is. What happens if you don't ratify someone? So clearly, the parish president has an opportunity to appoint someone. But if they come before you and they don't receive the required votes for ratification, we couldn't find them. What happens? Does that person stay in place? Do they, Mr. Kluhart, do you know?
No, but that's been a question for a lot of years.
That's
okay?
a question
That
for
didn't
legal
just start
counsel.
With anybody just thrown this with any part of the administration, okay?
Yeah.
We have several things in
Yeah.
government and law that what the hell you're gonna do if you get to that edge of that cliff.
Right.
Given 2017, it'll end up in an HR battle, I'm sure.
Probably so,
'Cause
and
I haven't
don't
found
like that.
anything that you can do to an employee. You didn't ratify them unless something was stipulated on the hiring.
Right.
Hiring based on,
Based on ratification, maybe within a certain period of time is what we're thinking. I mean, you see what happens at the federal level, and even sometimes the state level, where you have the tug of war of the legislative body or the governing authority not wanting to ratify, not wanting to put up someone for ratification, and that's the way they sort of keep that in limbo. So we think you don't need to, you need a little more clarity so that you're not facing those
on
situations.
the federal level, the job on ratification.
Yes, it is.
It's rather diluted on the local level
Yeah,
right now.
right.
We don't have a clear vision.
Right. So we do think that's important, and we have some suggestions for that if you would like to have that.
Yes.
We'll be happy to.
Any other questions from that side of the dais? Mr. Turner?
Just two quick questions. Now I'm looking at above the red line that we do have Lamar Dixon appears to be, has recreation report to them now.
It is a dotted line on this version. So the clear line of reporting would be to the chief administrative officer, but the Lamar Dixon head would also have sort of a functional authority rather than a direct line of authority, chain of command. You know, what you envision for recreation, after listening to many of you talk about it, is much more robust function. We do think that there are currently some shared equipment and employees, so that you don't have to duplicate in more than one department. So it makes a lot of sense for Lamar Dixon and Recreation to do that. I think you could streamline it a little more, actually. So that's where that is coming from.
Okay. There's a lot of words said. So what exactly does the dotted line mean?
It means that the person at Lamar Dixon doesn't hire and fire that person or recommend that to the parish president. The CAO, Chief Administrative Officer, is that person's immediate supervisor. So they assign work, they have oversight over the person's work, they're responsible and accountable for whatever the recreation people do. However, on any given day, the Lamar Dixon department head, if it is deemed a department, would be able to assign resources, talk about, collaborating and operational sorts of responsibilities. But at the end of the day, the responsibility is the solid line, not the dotted line.
You better have that good.
Does that make sense?
Okay, so that goes where it makes me go to my next question. I'm looking at your proposed job title consolidation list, and I guess I'm looking at the supervisor. I don't see anything on here where Lamar Dixon employees are represented. So where would they fall in at?
There are still 120 job titles that were not consolidated. We went as far as we could. So you have 120 other job titles. You should find them on the spreadsheet that I think I put it back. Yeah, on the spreadsheet that we handed out, the 6-page spreadsheet. You ought to be able to find, and we actually had columns that showed departments where we could find them, but we took it off because it made the spreadsheet quite hard to read. But your Lamar Dixon people are sprinkled through here with more generic types of job titles. So
what's the generic name?
well, they're going to be in a variety of positions.
Can I get
So
one?
you're, you're going to have accountants probably, and
Okay.
we'd have to pull it up to get you the exact, Cody may have the crosswalk with him, I do not, but this is what happens when you begin to provide career opportunities for people. You no longer have a Lamar Dixon accountant or a Lamar Dixon receptionist, so.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, so we have a supervisor 2 for recreation, correct? I'm assuming that would be Mr. Romano?
I do not think so. I don't think that that is that job title. I think his job title is, so I'll give you a hint on the first page. We have a lot of assistant directors. So always look there if you're looking for somebody who's towards the top of a department.
Not there.
Nope, don't see it there. I see the Director of Recreation on page 2. And I believe that that is the, Mr. Romano's title.
Okay. So, but he would indirectly report to Lamar Dixon, but we don't have any Lamar Dixon titles on here?
Well, all of their employees are on there. We would have to go back to the master spreadsheet.
Currently assigned to Lamar Dixon, you have an assistant manager of the Department of Public Works. You have concession stand workers, electricians, event services managers, event technicians, facility operations supervisors, food and beverage coordinators, laborers, night watchmen, and sales and marketing manager.
Okay, so in that group, I didn't hear anybody that would be over Mr. Romano, that they would be reporting to or would have to report to. I mean, I know he's not reporting.
It would be the
to
director of Lamar Dixon, but his main report would be to the chief administrative officer. So all of your departments would report to a chief operating officer or a chief administrative officer.
I know about it. So do we have a director of Lamar Dixon?
Yes.
And that's,
And we have a problem with that title because when people want and book events, that the title that he has had is not an industry related title. And
His current title is general manager.
so general
he's your
manager of
third
Lamar
general
Dixon.
manager. And no one calls an event facility and asks for the general manager. So he's recommended event. What is Mark? Yeah. So of the titles that we are eliminating, general managers being one of them, we want to work with your staff to figure out what is the best title. But the title will be identifiable rather than general manager or project manager, which was a catch-all title, that, if that helps.
So as of right now, it's kind of up in the air.
We have a recommendation for it, which is industry-specific for Lamar Dixon, yeah.
Are you allowed to disclose that now? What the name would be?
I just don't have it with me. I thought we had, we have notes, piles and piles, but it has to do with, if you go to the Superdome, for example, and you look up what we call the head of the Superdome, it would be something comparable to that. And I'm happy to get that for you, and I apologize that I don't have that.
That's okay.
It's general manager. It is general manager.
Right now, it's general manager. That's correct.
Any other questions, Mr. Turner?
I'll ask him later.
You reserve the right to come back.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Satterley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Christelle. A comment and then my questions. A comment with Mr. Kluot and others were talking about recently. I would direct you, as you look into it, which you've agreed to look at from our ABA meetings, where both the RPEC and I think it's called the Ascension Citizens Group, in addition to ABA, met with different agendas, but the idea morphed sort of into just looking at a parish management system to other changes in the homeroom charter, per se. And they made, I thought, some pretty good, those groups, suggestions for altering the homeroom charter to address this, quote, silence, unquote, which I know, notice legal's been silent so far about it. Maybe he will comment if I urge him to, you know, on the idea of, I can read my notes here, remedying what happens if a ratified position, regardless of which ones we're going to have, and this is morphing all the time. As recently as last week, I saw 6, then I saw 10. I'm not sure the number tonight. But what happens when they're not ratified? So that really, that's very important, has to be fixed. Now the questions. Again, in an earlier version, I saw several things I liked, and unfortunately, when I'm looking at tonight, some of these things that have been removed and or changed I don't like, so I'll just run through it quickly. The over there to the right in the little blue box, legislative/council secretary. Again, that was a suggestion made by some of those organizations like RPEX and others, but I've been a champion it for years, actually, is that the council secretary should answer to the council and not to the parish president. So you have a dotted line for the council, which is kind of, to me, always indicates a weaker connection, versus a solid line from the parish president. to the council secretary. Now, I don't mind the parish president, whoever that is or may be, having their own legislative, and I think they do need that secretary, and appointments and so forth and so on. But I don't like micromanagement, and I'm going to make comments about that relative to some of the other things that have changed here. I would like to see us have the ability to appoint and to fire, as well as to, I guess that's above the ratified line. Well, again, what does it do to ratify someone that the president doesn't want, for example? And I'm not saying the current president or the one I served under previously ever wanted that or whatever. It's just a discrepancy I don't like. Number two, previous versions, as recent as just yesterday that I've seen, had the citizens of this parish of Ascension Parish above the parish president and above the council, both of those two groups answerable to it, and that's, as you say in the legend, elected officials, as opposed to the red, orange, blue, respectively, that filters down to divisions, departments, and offices. We are elected by the people. We serve the people, and it filters down. All these things below in those colors I mentioned, red, orange, and blue, are appointed one way or another, or hired by either the parish president or the council.
Right.
Or the council through ratification of the president's choices, et cetera. So I would highly urge the consideration of putting citizens of Ascension Parish back into this org chart. Number three, I hate to keep harping on this. I've seen previous versions that had legal counsel, and I'd like to see it added back. I don't see it's lost now again. Let's not beat around the bush. Everybody knows that that's been a thorn in a lot of sides about whether or not we would continue to use D.A. Babin's appointed individual, and this is not a slight against Mr. Parrington or anything like that, versus having, it says in the charter, we can have our own council. It's my understanding this council, please correct me if I'm wrong, leadership sitting here in two different forms tonight, chairing this committee as well as the full council, that money's already being put aside that we might be hiring, not might be, will be hiring legal counsel for the council. I'd like to be able to deal with an individual and ask them to come directly, actually not ask them, demand that they come directly to a meeting and not have to deal with asking daddy. Number 4 or 5, wherever we are, I noticed on the chief operating officer, that wasn't in the version I saw last night either, or last week for that matter, and now it is. I'm personally against adding another high-level position, equal weight to the chief administrative officer. This new position smacks at more problems, and frankly, just to put an asterisk on it and call it new, that's kind of, to me, a misnomer, if not a misrepresentation, because I know we're not supposed to put names with positions per se, but is that not our IDD position that we just recently created, or that the administration created, not this council, and is active? Will be appearing in the next few minutes after this meeting in front of the Utilities Committee that I serve on. And that individual's job description said that he or she, successful applicant, would do transportation. I see that stemming down in blue. And would also do utilities at a higher level, one below, one above ratification in utilities. And utilities, of course, now in this parish are twofold, not just sewer, which we still need to get into the sewer business a lot bigger than we are when you get down to it in terms of parish-wide versus regional, but we now have potable water as a responsibility. And so what I'd like to see is that from the parish president, the version I saw previously, get rid of that blue line to the left coming up to the president to the COO, let it stem down through the CAO and then to the COO as it then stems down to transportation and utilities. And while we add it, not quite sure transportation is in the correct place. Again, I liked an earlier version, or I'd like to see it maybe moved under planning and development I'm just wondering, is it for chief operating officer to begin with? I made this comment when we were back doing the search. Can you really find a beast? Let me clean that word up. Can you find an individual that has the talents of potable water, sewer, and roads? And if so, I believe it was my colleague, Mr. Dempsey Lambert, said, yeah, Doc, and if we can we afford him or her?
Well said.
So I'm a little bit concerned about that. Let's see, where are we now? You've handled my question about fleet, because as I understand it, in answer to Ms. Ms. Cazzo, your recommendation of fleet and equipment management would supplant the word equipment and site that I see there. And
Yes.
I think that would be a good change, and I'm for that. In fact, in the previous ones, there wasn't fleet, and I was the guy that said, where's fleet? So I admit fully, I'm one of those guys. I'm wondering, I can't remember quite frankly, because I didn't take a copy, wasn't given one of the previous org chart with me, but I thought maybe purchasing was underneath finance along with grants, and that's been moved, and maybe you could tell us why. And I realize I've asked about 8 questions now. I don't know if you've been following it. We can go back over them on there. And last but not least, the redheaded orphan stepchild, Kara. I really believe it's important to put them in this org chart. And with that, you can address any or all of those, or I realize, let me just say this too. If we were going to make a motion tonight and we're going to move this, I would recommend that motion, challenge us to take, this is so new, take our time and not necessarily, I mean, whether it's a good time in January or not, I wouldn't argue that, to codify things, because there's been some major changes just in the last 24 hours that I'd like to think about. And these ramblings of an old man were just off the top of my head tonight. So we would put it to the next meeting, that's fine, but maybe for discussion purposes and not necessarily action. And believe me, I don't want to procrastinate no further than we have to.
Right.
Doc Sadley is a strong proponent of this. In fact, I captured this. When you said, we do not have, let me quote you, and you had just defined it, a working TO. That's, if everybody remembers in the audience, a table of organization. You followed that with the statement, Ms. Slaughter, that never have you seen anything like this before. Well, neither have I. And so clearly it's high time that we do something like this. You have no idea what it's like to serve as a member of this council and have your voters call you up and ask you for help, and you don't really know who to send them to.
Right, yeah, yep. I've had that conversation with several of you before.
Do you want to comment on any of these things, or you take notes, or if not, I'll be glad to get with you.
May I ask you 2 questions, and I'll make a
Sure,
couple comments.
go ahead.
And some other people may want to. I agree that Kara needs to be, if not on this high-level version, but we tried putting Kara on org chart months ago, and we're not sure if we would connect it to animal control and how we would connect it. So that's your thought question, is how
Well,
would you depict
if
that?
I had my druthers, right, coming down, I think it's an appropriate place under the CAO to be just one more blue box. It's an office like animal control, but I don't think it answers to animal control, correct me if I'm wrong, or vice versa. And
Right, it's
so
a
then it would
cooperative
go-
endeavor
It would go up
agreement, right?
to, it would go up to Ken, I'll keep the name out of it, it'll go up to the CAO and then
Right.
up to the president, because we have a cooperative endeavor agreement
Right,
with
right,
them.
right.
And, you know, it may last forever, it may not,
Mm-hmm.
who knows? But I think it deserves mention because it's a function in this parish that we now are funding at the level of $350,000. And there is, by the way, some talk right now of going out on a ballot and let the people decide, do they want to dedicate some tax monies, be that ad valorem or whatever, to fund that entity. So, yeah, it belongs in a hard chart.
That's very helpful, thank you. My other question was, in an earlier version, there was the drainage board was depicted with a dotted line relationship to drainage. Do you remember that? Did you see that?
Right, yeah, where you
Yeah.
have the blue
Yeah.
drainage maintenance currently
Yeah.
underneath DPW.
So if you were going to put citizens back with elected officials, and to me, that's a very important function of the parish.
Well, I didn't say it that way, but I concur 100%.
Okay,
I
that
think the
was my
Drainage
question.
Commission belongs in this org chart. And of course, guess what it is now? It's a body that was created by this council, right? Is that correct?
I
I'm
believe
sorry, I
so.
was,
It's a body that was created by this council, or is it created by law somehow otherwise?
By state law.
So it's by state law, so I don't know. You tell me, does it go up there as another purple with a dotted line connecting it to council? And even a dotted line connecting it to the parish president? I don't know, but yeah, I agree. It ought to be in there. Thank you for that.
I'm not sure I have answers to all your questions.
Because there's a big
necessarily.
difference between getting popcorn trees out of the ditch, drainage maintenance under DPW, and the Laurel, help me, Randy.
Laurel Ridge levy.
Laurel Ridge levy certification process, which we just learned that we get a Christmas present on, right?
Yeah.
And of course, all the other levy systems and major engineering, multi-millions of dollar projects.
Correct, right.
And the people say, well, so where's that in here? Well, I don't know. They're definitely not drainage maintenance per se. And again, I'm not asking you to respond to all these 8 or 10 questions I had, but if you want to work with me independently, you got my phone number. Be glad to go over them again with you.
More than happy to.
I'll keep my org chart, and I just say, let's take our times. And thank you for listening. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Certainly. Mr. Lambert?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a little confused here.
My bet is you're not the only one.
Well, you know, I just want to know straight up, will we have to go to anyone? Will anyone have a cut and pay when we go to this new job title consolidation?
Will anyone
Because
have
you
a
have
cut
your
and
old,
pay?
the old
No.
maximum, if they at the maximum, the minimum on the new is not, this is not adding up. Now, most of the folks have taken a beating already.
Oh, I see what you mean. Those people get moved to a different labor grade.
Right,
So no one should get a cut and pay.
okay, I want to make, that's
No
clear.
one should get a cut and pay.
Okay,
No, no. But good observation. They are recommended to move to a different labor grade. So let me tell you that some of the columns that we left off for just make it more clear, but we're happy to give you the entire spreadsheet with its, whatever the size of that big paper is. We have columns with your current salary ranges and then our market midpoint, minimum, maximum. So the research that we did for you is by job. At one point, some of you may remember, nobody said it yet, we recommended you get away from labor grades and you broaden your ranges. We don't believe that anymore. We think stick with your labor grades. People understand it. You're not locked into steps. You have enough flexibility in that. So we matched the job to the market. Now we had to go back and say, so what labor grade is the closest that matches that market-based salary? So that's why you will see some transition. And so, for example, the very first one, Accountant 1, the new position title will be Accountant. Currently, whoever has that title is in labor grade 113. They would move to 117. But if you catch something on here that looks odd like that, please let us know.
well, it's just so many, and I just want to make sure that we identify before we go any further with this, that we're moving forward. I don't want to have to go back.
No, that's exactly right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. President?
When we started this, I told you in the beginning, we wasn't cutting anybody's, salary was going to be cut if it was any changes. in it.
Right, yeah. And we, philosophically, we don't recommend that either. You simply freeze the person if they're over where they need to be. But you have some people who are over, but I think they're accommodated with this, with the labor grade changes, so. And I think that's wise counsel because, you know, to make sure this is right is going to take several sets of eyes on the parish side as well as our side. So we recommend that.
Thank you. Mr. Lambert?
Yeah, recreation, I thought our intent was not to put recreation under Lamar Dixon from the beginning.
It is not.
You know, because
It is
we did actually, you know, put a recreation facility over there, soccer fields and a few things, but recreation was still supposed to be independent of Lamar Dixon. So I
That's
just wanted to make that point. And
So think of the solid line. The solid line is one
Right.
that counts. So that is not,
Yeah, just want to make that statement. And talking about the Cara, the animal, I don't know if that's should be on the chart, What about economic development? What about our fire departments? There's a lot of things that can be put on the chart that we fund every year. But it's not part of, it's independent. It's not, it's non-profitable organization. Yeah, I don't think you want to put them in our organizational chart.
Whatever you decide to put on this chart, and we did not do this version, but we have done a lot of versions over the past several weeks and months. There needs to be consistency. So I'm going to take what you said and just take it a step further. So as I understand it, when you have a CEA, it's a public-private partnership. So any other public-private partnership where you signed a CEA, if you're going to put one on, you got to put them all on. If you're going to put a board and commission on, and maybe it's only boards and commissions where we had ad valorem taxes, then we ought to have all those. If we have no
Your chart would be, you know.
It's just got to be
very
consistent.
Very
Right,
broad, and you
right.
just can't you can't do one, you can't be non-consistent with it.
Right.
And
For
that's what I'm
our
looking at.
purposes, for what you asked us to do, we've got to make sure all of your employees are accounted for in a structure, in a table of organization. We ought to be able to list them even if you're not looking at the visual of it, so people understand every person has a home, where are they, and who are they responsible to, and who's responsible for them. And anything you want to put on in addition to that is great, but there ought to be consistency.
Right,
So,
exactly, that's what I'm getting at.
yeah,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Mr.
One
Kulat?
thing, wait, excuse me, let me answer.
Mr. President.
Councilman. You're correct, Councilman. The recreation director runs recreation. That dotted line is with Lamar Dixon because we have deals with Lamar Dixon on some of the,
Events.
the people and all, and if they need some of our grass cutters, vice versa. But the main thing is because of the agreements we made with Lamar Dixon selling advertisement to all the parks, and that's where that comes in. But Mr. Romano runs recreation.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the soccer is a totally different situation. But that's why the connection is.
Thank you, Pastor.
Mr. Kluwat?
Yeah, Christel, we'll start with the number one handout. Your proposed job title consolidation list.
Yes, sir.
They had a lot of questions about that. I'm good with. You named that there's like, how many positions out there that we hadn't entered into the consolidation?
There are about 120 additional job titles that did not fall neatly into consolidation. So some of them already have multiple incumbents in them, so there's no need to consolidate. But we were looking for opportunities where you would have a family of jobs.
Right,
And
and
the
that's,
rest.
I mean, that's the same thing we do in private.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
You look at the job duties, and you look at a pay range,
Right,
and then you say, okay, well, where can we balance and fit that in?
right.
I know.
And it also generally fits with the progression path for that type of employee.
Right, yes.
So we still got some out there you haven't got.
Yes, yes.
All right. Look at your second handout, the proposed, you know, current salary versus, you know, recommended salaries. And, you know, the whole low grade, new minimum, new max. We have some, especially in the higher, and we know exponentially, if you get a 3% raise, 3% of 50 is a lot more than 3% of 15.
Yes.
Right? So we see the expansion there, but I see some on the you know, especially in the director level and things like that we've actually got broken down, and we normally get people in pretty much in salary positions. We'll break them down an hour only to work the benefits in, you know, for us. But got some pretty extensive jumps there. We had talked early on in your recommendations that as you've been working with the parish, and you know, you came forward and you talked about earlier tonight that we looked at some opportunities to bring some people up. You
Right,
threw the dollar figure out, you threw the numbers. It was very palatable to this voting body, so they went ahead and pitched in $1 million, okay? Right? Right here, I mean, I just can't put my head around how much, you know.
Oh, let me address that. So,
Please.
good, thank you.
Please.
This does not have anything to do with any individual salary.
Thank you.
This is their range, right?
That's it.
So for everyone viewing who is watching at home and a fine employee of Ascension Parish, you are not moving into the maximum of the job range if we're talking about that.
Wanna
Thank you
make that
very
clear.
much for making that clear. But people do need to be placed, and I will tell you, this is no small task for your human resources staff, to make sure they're taking people from the old plan into the new plan and doing that appropriately so that you don't get compression where people are bumping up against their supervisor's pay or something like that. So thank you for pointing that out. Yes. No, this is not all new money that you have to come up
That
with.
can be passed around and be misconstrued.
Yes,
All
no,
right.
no, that's right. At some point in time, everything is public record. And so
Yeah.
you can go to parishes like Jefferson Parish and you can literally look up somebody's job title or LSU and find out exactly what they make.
And that's,
And,
and you should be able to do that here.
That's right, that's right.
All right, go to your handout number 3 on the parish president's salary.
Yes, sir.
You'd made mention of the 148,000.
I believe that's right.
I just want to clarify
Thank
that. I
you.
think it's still at 100,000, unless I'm wrong.
You're
I
correct.
think it's still at 100,000, and several years ago, back a term and a half ago, that we found through different entities, one being the drainage boards and things, to supplement some of the
Yes.
parish presidents. So
Thank you.
that is a supplemental. So when you go clean and go on a charter, and you go by the last thing that was voted on by this board or the people, it's at $100,000. And the average of the other people that run the parish and the other 5 entities is probably around 150 to 170. So it's about 50 grand under right now.
Yes,
And you can give that other money back to go clean some ditches.
exactly.
All right, so.
Thank you
that's-
for
that's something-
pointing that out. I
Yeah,
think that's important. If we were
that's something-
writing,
That's something that this elected body
can
and,
deal
or
with.
either home rule charter, whatever, has to address at some point. It is
Right.
way behind for the quality of people that you think you want to go ahead and get to run your parish.
Right,
All right? And, so, because, some of them read like a Zen riddle, but, some parishes, but, it's,
you think that's done on purpose?
and then, yes, ma'am, it was.
Yes, I
Okay,
think so,
in
too.
whatever parishes, it
Right.
was done, just
That's right.
like,
Right.
naming.
But I'm really pleased that that up, because we had talked about that at a prior meeting. If we were writing up your methodology, that would be very important to note, that it's being supplemented out of another fund. So this is an opportunity, if you're going to go in and change things, to
That was
clean it up.
basically done by a vote of this council,
Yeah,
out
Yeah.
of council, sitting council.
Mhm.
And that can stay, go away, do whatever.
and technically, correct me if I'm wrong, your parish president is the person that the drainage board employs, if you will,
Let me-
to
let me
to
clear-
watch over
Let me clear
this,
that
right?
up for you.
Okay,
Is the fact
please
that
do.
Within the East Ascension Gravity Drainage District Number 1 is an independent entity with the basis of that every parish councilman on the east side of the river will serve as that board, on that board. Okay? What has done with a joint, or an agreement is for the past 9.5 years, is that they've signed an agreement with the parish council and the drainage board that the parish president would have oversight. Okay? That money's still coming from a different tax base. So we, for
Good-
years
good
it
point.
was the parish president. 3 terms ago, it left the parish president, went back, and then 2 terms ago, 2.5 terms ago, it came back to the parish president. So, giving him the managing authority for East Ascension gravity drainage and West Ascension drainage. So that can go away or stay. So it's nothing,
Right,
so, and that was one of, that was one of the leveraging points to try to give them a little a
Right.
siphon or something,
Right.
off that, is that, gave them that much more authority to manage.
right. Well said.
Because it's kind of the old saying, oh, you're taking half my responsibilities away, but you're not cutting my pay, thank you.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The org chart, I know it's been, hammered out, and everybody's been, several people have looked at it and all, and, Doc's made reference to the one he seen yesterday or something. I didn't see it, so, I don't know what the one day before yesterday or 5 days ago looked like. I missed it somehow.
It wasn't as pretty as this one, I'll just tell you that.
Yeah, well, so,
Beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
so I think this chart, without getting into details and going up past, all the residents of the parish that we represent and going back down to all the different boards and entities that we have agreements with, this is basically simple of, the original thing was to look at what does the parish president, as he runs our parish within
Right.
government, what does he have under him and how those responsibilities are distributed
Right.
and what positions are authorized or unauthorized within that, and what level of positions do the majority of the people think that really needs to be ratified, or, down below the line or above the line, whether some of this moves or not,
Right.
You come in and say, hey, look, I want y'all to meet Joe, I just hired him, he's gonna be cutting grass, you know what I mean?
Right.
So that was just an advisory thing, we don't
Yeah.
have to ratify him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, back to the ratifications, what I spoke about before, I think I haven't had anybody be able to give me a clear sign on if we don't ratify someone,
Right.
do they walk out without a job?
Right. Right.
We have currently, I think, a probationary period of something like 90 days, I don't know, be reviewed after 90 days employment. I think there's been some talk and discussion that what would have asked of you earlier is to take a look at that and see
Mm-hmm.
what's up on it, so that's good. I'll work with that later. But I don't really see at this time any need to add all the different entities that we might have an agreement with, or boards, or things like that. And I think this is being looked at tonight, and I just don't know how we can move this forward tonight without further discussion.
I
Thank you.
I would strongly suggest that you not. I think that good, robust discussion among council members, administration, and you have the ability to bring to the council, full council at your meeting, and then after that, I think that's a great idea. Thank you.
Yes, Councilman Lawler.
Okay, I may jump around a little bit because so many people have said so many things. Wow.
We did that.
You certainly confused me. I've got a headache in here for the second night in a row. I guess this is a start of a chart, but I don't think this is something you would have produced. It's missing too much, in my opinion. I'm going to jump around a little bit. I'm going to step on your toes right away, Christelle. I think that we should have a general manager, and that should be at Lamar Dixon. I think it is the right term at the Superdome. It's the general manager of the Superdome. They have the general manager of the Lakefront, UNO Lakefront Arena. I think that's the proper term. The problem is, what I understood from looking at, I think one of the earlier documents, is that we have 13 project managers and senior project managers, which I find amazing. I didn't realize we had that many projects going on in our parish right now. And all this leads somewhere, because I've been doing some research. I've been looking at our Blue Book on the employment side of things. I know Dempsey was very concerned about cuts in pay. I believe from reading our employment Blue Book, and correct me if I'm wrong, and Toledo, you may be able to add in on this, that no employee should have their pay cut. That if an employee is moved to a different position, we have and we've adopted the Blue Book by ordinance, it states that you don't cut that employee's salary. Is that correct? Correct.
She wouldn't be able to comment. I think you're right.
I think I'm right, too.
Because I'm braver, and so I'll go ahead on that limb with
Yes.
you. And honestly, we see organizations do
do
that differently. Some organizations, if you are demoted or if you are bumped or you go to a job with less responsibility, your pay is adjusted. In government organizations, unless there's a disciplinary action, it's really hard to do that to an employee. It affects their benefits, so.
So
Whatever
that's a concern that I don't think we need to have with this pay scale, with this pay chart. It is a concern I think parish government has to have, that we can't cut people's pay. As far as the president's salary goes, I agree with Randy. I think it needs to be raised. I know that's probably an unpopular thing for people to hear me say, and it has nothing to do with this president, last president, the next president. Well, it really does have to do with the next president, because if we're going to pay a fair wage,
Right.
we need to get good people. We can't have it dependent upon, okay, we may give them this money, we may not give them this money. I think we really
Right.
need to, as a council, come up with a plan to raise the salary and make it non-dependent upon the drainage board, because it's two separate issues. So that's something I think that we should work on. I've been working on an organizational chart myself. It's probably not ready for public consumption yet, but it's somewhat. Nobody could read it. But one of the reasons I've been working on that is, I've been championing this GPS system for a while. And I know that there's some back and forth on it, but I believe that the organizational chart is a step that we'll need for the GPS system. And I think it's a great way that we can use the GPS system and the chart together to see how we apply it. So that's a reason I think we need to move quickly on this. Unfortunately, from what I see with the chart in front of me, is it's not ready to move tonight. This chart isn't. But we're delaying things like applying GPS rules and regulations on our vehicles that could save us money over time if we're not doing this. With regards to ratification, it's something I've thought about a lot for years, since 2 years or a year and a half since I've been on this council. One of the things that I believe that we need to look at is a 45-day ratification period. That we have a line, and just using this chart as an example, anybody on there, once they're hired, we have 45 days to ratify that person. If they're not ratified within that time period, then they cannot be paid as a employee of the parish. If we can't make and I say we, if the council and the parish president, the administration can't get together, and we as a council cannot be convinced that this is the right person for the job in 45 days, I think that's fair to the council, it's fair to the public, it's also fair to the individual, because they don't want to wait too long.
Right.
And I have a concern that if you say 90, 180 days, you've got people looking for houses and apartments that don't know if they're going to be here,
Right.
if they're coming in from out of the area. So I'd like to keep it at a relatively short period of time because of that. We have to keep it fair to people. One of the things, I've been doing a lot of research in the information we have, where we are. Like I said, I'm going to step on some toes tonight, but I've developed a list of things, of information I think we need, because we as a parish right now, we have I don't want to say an unlimited amount, but we don't seem to have any bounds toward the growth of the employees in the parish. We can continue to hire more and more employees. And the problem is we don't have a baseline, and I'm not sure exactly of the best way to limit this, but if we're going to consolidate the position titles, then we may have to look at consolidating the number of people we can have in each position. Like I said, if we've got 13 project managers and senior project managers together, we're just throwing people in those positions. That's costing us money. And we've heard it on multiple occasions. We don't have money for this, we don't have money for that. Well, we got to find it. So what I'd like to do, and I have a list of now 12 things, and I can read them, that I would like the administration to provide. And for the years 2015 and 16, I think 30 days would be enough because we should have that information. The information for 2017, though, would take about 90 days, I believe, because some of that information may have to be gathered and is still not ready. Obviously, we're not even at the end of the year. So it'd be the salary of each employee, benefits incurred on behalf of each employee, the benefit costs, that is, because salary and benefits are two different things. And I think that's important Because we look to big cities like Chicago that are in a financial crisis right now, and it's not because of their everyday spending.
Right.
It's because of the benefits that they're responsible for.
Yes.
So we need to get a hold on that. And why is that important? Because every time we hire somebody and keep them on, those are benefits that we're incurring. I'd like to see the number of salary adjustment amount in dollars as a percentage of the pre-existing salary, including both up and down. The number of promotions and demotions. I'd like to see a total payroll for January 1st and December 31st, so we can see, say for the year 2015, what was the payroll when we started? What did it change to at the end of the year? And that way we can constantly track that. That's what I'm getting at. The number of retirements that we've had for each of these years, 2015, 16, 17, number of dismissals, not why the dismissals were made, just the number of them. I'd like to identify all rules, regulations, and procedures promulgated with regard to personnel human resources. And the reason I say that, I noted in our blue book that those have to be passed by the council.
Yes, they do.
And I don't think we've been doing that. And this is, these are all things that predate this administration. None of this is significant, not significant, is accountable only to this administration. This has been going on for years, and we have to make sure it doesn't go on in the future years. I'd like to see the number of vacation sick days taken by each employee to make sure that we're properly accounting for that. Because, I've seen it before that people are taking vacation sick days, but it's not getting marked down. And we pay for that at the end of the year. This accrues, I think, infinity, if I understand correctly. And if we're not accounting for it, that's going to cost us a lot of money when these people retire, hundreds of thousands of dollars possibly. I know this is odd, but the total SIF recovery, SIF is Second Injury Fund with regard to workers' compensation. And I want to make sure that the parish has, it's number 11, does the parish have an SIF form for each employee? And basically what that is when somebody's employed, they have to fill out a second injury form, which y'all probably know what this is, whether you've been injured before. If you got a back injury and you get hurt, and you already have that, and it's on the form, and you get hurt and you make a back claim against comp, the parish doesn't have to pay for it all. So it really helps the citizens of this parish keep our comp rates down. And finally, I'd like to see, and this just came to me just now, for each project manager and senior project manager, identify which projects they're managing and the outcome of the projects.
Let me use that and go back to what you said earlier, because I really want to clear this up. People are given the title. They just need a different title. Some people were put in there as a catch-all, but that's relatively few. So most of these people would be, for example, a human resources specialist or a benefits coordinator in human resources. They just got put in this classification. So they're not all just catch-all kinds of things. So you're right. If they are in the future going to be called a project manager, they should really be managing projects. That's exactly right.
Exactly.
Right.
And I'm sure some of them are just
tease
placed.
out the other ones. Yeah.
But that's what I want to see. I said there's some that I don't think are. It's my understanding that we've had like 90 new individuals hired. I can't find that in the budget. It's hard to find, and that's part of what this is. I mean, it's hard to look into this information. So I want to get all this information. I've got it right here, and I can hand it to the administration. They can take it
Aaron,
and look into it. Yes, ma'am.
do you think it would be beneficial, since this information is comprehensive, and perhaps, Christelle, you might agree, perhaps we appoint a subcommittee to work with the administration? I would even suggest that Talita, would you be willing to serve on that subcommittee? Dawn, would you be willing to assist us in that? And then Aaron, if you would like to serve.
Not by myself, please.
Okay, well, that's
I'm
okay.
scared, yeah.
I would be happy to participate. Is there someone else who would like to participate in this
I would love to participate.
OJ? Okay, I think that's probably plenty. 5? Benny? 6 is okay? Okay, let's do it that way.
Great suggestion.
We'll have a subcommittee of the Finance Committee to assist.
How about Mr. Dawson also?
That's fine.
Fine.
We're going to get the size of the
Help
council,
things
but
moving on.
I'm good with that. That's fine.
Which one?
See, the more
Ken.
there are, the harder it is to get everybody together.
I'm sorry. You cut it.
But if you would allow us to participate without someone present, that would be fine, because this is going to require some meetings and some accumulation of information. And like I said, the more people that are on a subcommittee, the harder it is to get a date and time when everybody can get together. But I'm happy with those that have been mentioned, representing the administration. Certainly Benny, Aaron, myself, and OJ can work together on this from the council perspective. And then we'll pull all that together and see how it compares to your information, Christelle, how it fits in with your information, and then we'll go from there. Do I have everyone's support in doing that?
Yep.
Mr. Satterley?
Yeah, just a question. You have my support. This committee will be calling at least one meeting or more where the individual members of this council who are not on the committee will be called to come in, because we've all spoke tonight about, I'd like to see this, I'd like to see that.
Think we can bring our report back in this finance committee?
I'm asking, like, I and others will get, on the committee will be given an opportunity to come forward to this subcommittee.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you want to come, and anybody.
Are you appointing leadership, Madam Chairman, to the committee? Who do we request that we would like to come see?
I'm going to appoint the
volunteer to do it.
creator of this nightmare. That's going to be Mr. Law. No good deed goes unpunished.
Oh, they have a headache.
Aaron, if you're
Now you
willing
got a
to chair
migraine.
that committee, I'd appreciate it. Subcommittee.
I'll be happy to.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you for the mention of that, Mr. Satterley. We can.
Do we
Do we need a motion?
Yeah, do we need a motion to,
No,
make?
she can
I
create.
I
she
think
can
I
create it.
I think I can create one without a motion.
All right.
Thank you so much. All right, Aaron, proceed. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it seemed like a good time.
Okay, that is. Really, the only other thing, I've still got some ideas on the organizational chart. I think it's very important that we get it in there, not just for the GPS purposes, but so people have the opportunity to know where they can move, who they can address. One of the things that I really like that you said is that we use common names for things. Because I know I have people that just email me, hey, I can't find this. We use strange names sometimes. And strange names will become familiar if we use the same thing over and over.
Right.
So I'd like to settle in on that. The only other thing, and this was some of my side research, was we talked about the budget and looking at the budget. And Ohio, the state of Ohio right now, they have a thing called the Ohio Interactive Budget. And I would encourage our administration to take a look at it. You can type that into Google, and it pulls it up. It's one of its kind in the nation. It is the easiest thing to follow, and it's winning all kind of awards. But it's just absolutely amazing. You go in there, and if you want to look up how much is this contractor getting, you can do it. And you just see where your money's going. And right now, within the state of Ohio, several municipalities are starting to use it also because it's fantastic. So it's just, I don't know if that really fits into this, but we talked about the budget. I encourage everybody to take a look at that, and maybe we can talk about that at future meetings also.
Next.
And yield.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cagnolotti.
Thank you, Christelle. You gave us a lot of information here tonight. But you mentioned a couple of things early on before we got into the org chart. And I agree with my colleagues who have said that this is just not ready to go forward yet. We have a lot more work to do, I think. But I don't want it to drag out for another year either. But you said earlier we must adopt job titles compensation plan. That plan's still being devised. The need for proposed rules, policies, and procedures drafted by the HR director and the parish president presented to us for adoption. Procedures for ratification, that needs to be researched, I think, as Randy mentioned. And I think, to me, very critical to even compiling an organization chart is the TO.
Right.
The table of organization.
Right.
And people are, if we're going to do title changes, the whole organization is going to change.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just encourage you to continue doing what you're doing. Give us more detailed information as you see fit.
Yeah.
And with recommendations, and we can go from there.
Good.
But thank you.
Thank you.
That's all, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Cagnolotti. Mr.
Christelle, so, and you may have answered this with the discussion that's been going around. So I've got a person that's at an accountant 1 level, and we're going to put them at accountant
and move them to a new LG of 117 from 113, what am I going to do to make sure that that person is qualified to go to that level? And, you know, is that going to be within job descriptions? How are we going to manage that to make sure that, you know, I've got a person that may be an accountant too, but within the new function, they're not going to go to a one, you know, they're not going to fit, or an accountant 3 in this particular case, that goes to a new LG of 119, but because they don't, depending on the qualifications, they don't meet that 119, so they're not going to go to a senior accountant, they're going to wind up staying at an accountant level. Not that we're going to cut your pay, but how do we make sure?
This has nothing to do with that. This has nothing to do with qualifications or competence or performance.
Okay.
It's simply taking your pay plan and making it market ready. So the assumption is that your department heads know that people are competent, and that's why they still have their job. And so this is just taking the information that we provided to you several months ago and putting it in a form where we're putting the actual titles next to it, and just giving you a labor grade so you would know where it went. It's the same minimum and maximum market research. So if I'm one of your employees, it really doesn't matter what labor grade I'm on. What we're doing is we're changing the salary range to better match the market. I may not get an additional $1. I'm just getting moved into a salary range that better matches the market. Now, if my salary range is off, and you did have a few people who were below what the new minimum was, my understanding is they've been moved.
Right.
So you all authorized that. That's been done. So this is just a matter of, if you think about moving the grades up. But I'm glad you asked that, Councilman, because it has nothing to do with somebody's performance.
Right.
That's a different
Or qualifications?
mechanism. Correct.
What about qualifications as far as none of that?
It's assumed.
So a while ago, you mentioned about table of organization and that being codified in a ordinance. What's the difference? Because we've had conversations about this, myself and you, in the past, about an org chart versus a table of organization, and one being in the form of an ordinance and the other one not.
I think there would be some differences of opinion, or even differences of professional opinion about what a table of organization is or isn't. But there are a lot of table of organizations that are not visually depicted. They are described in budgets, for example, where we'll have the Department of Public Works, and it will tell you what the offices are under that, how many people are in each one, what the salary line is, what the operational budget is, et cetera. But that table of organization has to do with those positions rather than the organization chart, which is a visual depiction of that. Essentially say the same thing. So
why would you put one in an ordinance form and not the other?
That's your choice, okay? Whether you put either one in. I will just tell you that you can't keep changing either one, whether it's visually depicted or whether it is, I know how many people I have and what my budget is and what I'm accountable for. So we are having a hard time tacking that down, mainly because of just the practices in the parish of the past of how they account for employees, and they don't necessarily tell you what department they're in. But the fluidity of the names of departments and the ability to change it, that is very unusual in a public organization. So however you're able to tack that down and say, you know, either that we're putting this in ordinance and it can't be changed without changing the ordinance, or this is what's been adopted. These are the names of the department, these are their budgets and people and so on and so forth. It would be very helpful for you to figure out as a body how you're able to tighten that up so that it's less fluid.
And looking at the org chart, I've heard a lot of comments tonight. Some of them pique my interest, others I agree with, some of them I don't.
with drainage and adding those on here, part of it was mentioned before, but I think it needs to be stated that drainage is a total separate entity. While finance and so forth are managed through the parish, drainage board is not answerable to the council. It's a total separate organization. We hire the parish president to manage it for us. We have the ability to hire someone else if we wanted to do that. So it's a total separate operation, kind of as an example of how big this organizational chart needs to be. I am curious, and the first one I think is kind of answers itself, but under this org chart we have presented to us tonight, first time I'm seeing it, that under new position for ratification, they have COO, and that one's kind of self-explanatory, but what would be some of the justifications, or what is the justification for putting that as a ratification position within parish government, that it's currently not there?
I'm going to guess that it is because it is above the line. So if you're going to ratify positions, then you would, again, look for consistency in your organization chart. So anything that is above that line will be ratified. So that you would add 3 the asterisk positions, as I understand it, that are above that line. And so what, as a consultant, we would look for is, are these substantial entities? Do they have significant authority that warrants ratification? If it's part of the organization that has very few employees, very small budget, be hard to justify ratification. So that's the only thing that I can comment on.
So the same question would go towards Homeland Security as well, and Lamar Dixon as well. What's the justification for moving them into a position that would be make them to be ratified?
I think that the people who saw this as a good idea felt like those were significant and important functions of government, because it's a functional chart, except for those top 3 positions. So those would warrant council approval.
Would that like speculation on your part?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I agree with several other comments here. I think we've got to, I don't want to extend this out any further than what we absolutely have to, but I think there's several questions that, those are the few that I can think of right off the top of my head. We've got a lot of information being brought to us to digest tonight. I like the idea of the subcommittee. I would like to see that this be taken up by them to be pushed forward, either back here or to the full council at a later date, whatever be the purview of that. But I don't think we're ready to move on this tonight. And I think that the information that Councilman Lawler brought up, some of that I would believe would be pertinent to where do we wind up with this? And I do have one other suggestion that not related to this, but we've been at this for about 3 hours now, Madam Secretary, and Madam Chair. I would recommend that we take about a 5 or 10 minute recess.
Let me let Mr. Cluott make his statement, and then I think I could accommodate that.
Thank
Mr.
you, Madam
Cluott.
Chair. Mr. Johnson, thank you for yielding the floor. Christelle, I'm gonna give you something to think about. I'll take a break. Aaron had mentioned the increase in salaries over the past couple of years, increased employees. I had somebody gave me a number of 90 employees. Are you able, or were you able to quantify that, where that's at? I mean, we bought a utilities company since
Correct.
then. We did several things. I know under the past administration, we probably had several departments that had open positions in the double digits that they just didn't fill. Okay, so did we fill them? So or now we see in the yield or the wrath of things that just held down before. You know what I mean?
Right.
So without throwing that statement out,
Yeah.
just easy to throw out $1 million and 90 employees, things like that. But so have you seen, or have you looked at, and can we quantify that?
Yes. Well, I'm not sure what's an urban myth and what is real. But you did ask us to look at the change in employees from the last year of the Martinez Tommy Martinez's administration, the first year of Kenny Matas's administration. We did that analysis for you, and we brought it. It is in our report. And things like utility workers are in there. I think Lamar Dixon changed some positions from one category to another, and so that backed some out. But the analysis based on the information we had, the high-level analysis is in there. We did receive detailed information from finance, so that information is there. Now, that is as of that moment in time. So.
And that was nothing that you went back and tried to recapture.
Right, we just had the information, the
Put that
analysis that
there
was
and
done
move
by
on to something.
HR and finance.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And we are briefly adjourned.
So this is that information.
A motion to reconvene, Madam Chairman. Second.
We are reconvened. If everybody will pull themselves back together, please. So, Christelle, I don't know where Christelle is. She's in the back? All right. I kind of rushed the pulling everybody back together, and we're trying to, but that was about the only way to make it happen.
That's all right.
So, at this point, I was still looking for Christelle. I wanted to thank Christelle and her team for pulling all of this tremendous information together for the benefit of this committee tonight. It certainly is my expectation that we will move forward to codify the 11 recommendations that were initially made by Christelle and her team, as well as to actively pursue codification of the rest of the work that she's presented tonight. I think it's important that we determine the structure of our government, that we align that with our charter, and what I believe it does is ensure stability over time and over administrations, which I think is incredibly important. I think this will all work together to ensure that we have an accurate pay plan, that we have job descriptions, and that we have qualifications for those jobs that are meaningful and that will allow our very much appreciated staff to know their path forward. So it is equally important tonight that we take some time to absorb all of this information. So the chair would entertain a motion that we reconvene in the next Finance Committee meeting to continue our deliberations on this matter, and that this committee will function in the meantime to answer some questions, and that members of the council will work together around the organizational chart with the administration.
Second.
Have a motion by Mr.
Second.
Kluwat and a second by several. I heard Mr. Dawson over here. So, any questions or comments?
Yes. My question would be, in this motion, so we're going to pick this up at the next finance meeting. We're not going to the full council, but will the subcommittee that's been appointed have had time before that meeting to have met one or more times to bring us their recommendations, or is just this body going to independently act? I don't understand.
Well, I think, and if I don't want to
Please,
speak out of order,
Aaron.
my thought is it's going to take a little bit of time to gather. It's a tremendous amount of information that we're asking for. So I don't want to, yeah, it's definitely going to be after the first of the year. I think, 30 days will be pushing it on the 2015 and 2016. And getting the information for 2017, it's not even 2018 yet. So that's going to take some time. I don't think all of this information, though, is necessary to move forward with an organizational chart or a compensation package. And Christelle, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
I would agree with you completely, and I think.
So the motion is to postpone sort of indefinitely?
No. Till the next,
Well, regardless, we're going to discuss this next time.
this information's coming back to us next time.
Okay, if that's the case, then my second question is, you mentioned we need time to absorb. I totally agree with that, Madam Chairman. The voluminous information, several councilmen have mentioned that besides myself tonight, that was handed out. And again, it was handed out at the meeting. So I'm referring to the 5 or 6 handouts in addition to the org chart and so forth. So what I would like to see would be, can we get I know Ms. Slaughter, is she still here?
Yes.
Yeah, can we, Christelle, get a copy of your PowerPoint presentation? I mean, I tried to take notes, but
Absolutely.
It itself was rather voluminous.
Yes, I'll be happy to get that to you, and we'll be happy to get you information electronically that we handed out.
And for
Not a
sure,
problem.
Mr. Lawler's committee needs to have a copy of that.
Right.
Thank you.
And we'll continue revising over the next week or so that you have it at your council meeting.
Yeah, and our hope will be that before the next Finance Committee meeting, our agenda can be more clear, and certainly that we can have the attachments necessary for review prior to the agenda. That was not possible this time. There was just so much information being pulled together at the last moment, and since this was just an introduction of information, was not deemed necessary. But what we will do, what I would ask you to do, Christelle, and your team before our next meeting in January, is to we have pulled this information together, we'll get it out ahead of
I'm going to be very honest with the council. Until you adopt an organization chart, I cannot finish our work.
Right, thank you.
That's
Thank
the
you.
question.
Okay,
Thank you.
so if you'll, then we'll touch base on that, on each thing, but we would hope that we will be able to move an organizational chart forward in the next Finance Committee meeting. That we will have nailed that down, we will be able to make a motion and send it to the council. Then by the next meeting in February, you should be able to present everything else. The next Finance Committee meeting. And look, I'm happy for that to skip finance, if it can go straight to council. In order to expedite that process, I'll be fine with that. You won't hear any objection from the chairman of finance. Any other questions? Mr. Joseph?
Madam Chairman, if so, I just hope you would consider just having a special meeting. If we're going to go move to council first, we may have to have a special meeting just for this topic alone, and that'll be up to you, but I would make sure you take that into consideration.
The chair would be happy to do that. Happy to do that. Okay. All right. Christelle, team, thank you all so much.
We got a vote.
And
The motion table.
there was a motion and a second.
Electronically?
Questions?
Are we doing this electronically?
Oh, yeah, let's play with our buttons.
Well, yeah, see if you have any opposition.
Do they work, Bill?
Let's see if you have any opposition.
Do we have any opposition?
She don't have the capability.
She doesn't have the capability down there. Okay.
But you can still press them, it's just fun.
You can just press the button.
Press it.
But anyway, are there any objections? Hearing no objections, that motion passes. I want to thank everybody again for their patience and tolerance of this long discussion, but it's just absolutely necessary. The business of this government is not going to get done if we do not take the time and give it the attention it's necessary. Okay. Item number 8. Amendment number 3 to the master contract for professional services with Providence Technical Services to extend the end date of the contract to June 30th, 2018. Ms.
So
Collins.
moved. So moved.
Second.
Have a motion by Councilman Joseph, a second by Councilman Todd Lambert. Any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes.
Thank you, Madam
Item
Chair.
number 9, an amendment, number 1, to the master contract for professional services between Gulf South Engineering and Testing and Ascension Parish Government for geotechnical assistance.
So moved.
Motion
Second.
by Councilman Lawler, second by Councilman Dempsey Lambert. Any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item number 10, a certificate of substantial completion, Getro General Contractors, LLC.
Second.
Have a motion by Councilman Dempsey Lambert, a second by Councilman Randy Cluott. Any questions?
Thank, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you, Wayne, for coming here. You had any questions or comments? Good? Everything's good, huh?
The chief
Thank
is
you.
here. We thank him for his service.
Thank you so
And
much, Mr.
do we
Chairman.
have any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Number 11, resolution to enter into a cooperative endeavor agreement of similar terms in the conditions of the original agreement, Pi Entertainment and Ascension Parish, in lieu of reimbursement as provided in the original agreement dated March 22nd, 2017. Kyle, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, and I'll try to make this quick.
I have a motion by Councilman Cluott, a second by Councilman Lawler. Any questions? Mr. OJ?
Okay, I got it on the last end. But Kyle, this is the money that for the
Right.
The
We're just
carry
rolling-
over for
rolling
another-
that money forward to the next year.
Okay.
So this was treated like a break even. So we're rolling it to the next one.
Okay, just wanted the public to know that, Thanks.
To have a motion and a second, any other questions? Mr. Cluott?
Kyle, thank you for the job. Thank you guys for participating, and we look for a long future.
Hope you had fun.
Thank you.
Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Item number 12, approval of an engagement letter with the Arbitrage Group to prepare the arbitrage earnings report for the 2007 series jail bond issue. Ms. Dawn.
This is a compliance requirement of the bonds that we have for the jail for us to hire someone to prepare this arbitrage earnings calculation report. And we usually use the Arbitrage Group, and this is their agreement. I think the range they projected is $1,750 to $2,500.
Second.
Have a motion by Councilman Todd Lambert, a second by Councilman John Cagnolotti. Any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Number 13, approval of debt service policy.
You have before you the debt management policy, and it basically is divided into several sections. The first is just to explain the policy for us and purpose for issuing debt. And the second one you can see are the conditions you would think about when you would have a debt issuance, which would be the project characteristics and the useful life of your project, the existing debt that you already have, along with approved debt limits, statutory limitations.
We good?
Identification of a funding source to help repay the debt, type of debt instruments, the market conditions, the length of issuance, and then in Section 3, list out the different professional services that are involved whenever you issue debt. And then Section 4 talks about the post-issuance compliance and disclosures, which the Chief Financial Officer makes sure that all of those are done in accordance with the laws that are required.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Bill Dawson, a second by Councilman John Cagnolotti. I have a question by Councilman Randy Cluott.
Thank you for y'all bringing this forward, Madam Chair and Finance. And I think in years gone by, there's a lot of confusion about all the parties that have to be involved and the legal hurdles and the criteria that has to be done to make this happen anytime we have a debt issuance. Thank you very much.
Sure.
So there's a lot of work goes into it before we get involved.
Thank you, Mr. Cluott. Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. The monthly contract report, Ms. Sandra.
Good evening. You have before you a list of all contracts, new and renewals that were entered into in the month of November.
Does anyone have any questions about the monthly contracts?
Just one, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Lambert?
So number 6, the CES Highway 42 sewer testing and inspection. Was that due, what was that due to?
That was due to some, if I may, Madam Chair.
You may.
That was due to some infiltration that we were looking at on Highway 42. So the goal was to go through this testing to find out exactly what was the cause, where it was associated by the contractor, or possibly a utility punching our line somewhere.
And what was the outcome?
They're still testing.
All right. You'll get back with us on that.
I'll get back with you on it.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that report is adopted. All right. Number 15, the annual contracts to be renewed in 2018.
You have before you a list of all contracts. These are all renewals for 2018.
So moved, Madam Chairman.
A motion by Mr. Todd Lambert, a second by Mr. John Cagnolotti. Any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes.
Thank you.
Item number 16, the sales and use tax report. Ms. Gwen. Ms. Gwen, we can't hear you.
There's 2 more reports due for 2017 before we conclude the collections for that year. Actually, what's going on right now is when you look at the month to comparison to 16 is the plants and motor vehicles and the home improvements are all down. And as far as motor vehicles and home improvements, that would be due to the flood of 2016. And on the second page is the bar chart. You can see that all sectors are up except for the petrochemical industry and their major suppliers. And then the pie chart depicts, using just the 1 cent sales tax, it's just giving you an idea of where our sales taxes are being collected. And then also you have the history chart for all three of the districts, the last page. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer. Thank you, Ms. Gwynn. Are there any questions? Mr. Satterly?
Yeah, just quick, Gwen, thank you for the report. On the half-cent sales tax for the East Ascension drainage, sizable jump in 2017 from beginning of year through October compared to the 4 previous years in a row. Any particular explanation for that?
You're looking at the bar chart? I mean,
Yeah, the very first bar chart. The other taxes are down compared to the same 4 years, but that one's up substantially.
Right, it is. East Ascension drainage is up, and I think there was some major issues, purchases, with E-Tel and one other business in our parish that just East Ascension, not the 2 sales tax districts would have applied, but they were in the city of Gonzales, so just East Ascension enjoys their tax in the city of Gonzales.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gwynn. Any other questions? All right, we will move along to the revenue and expenditure report. Ms. Amanda.
Good evening. Before you are the normal financial reports for the month of October 2017. Page 1, revenues are at 89.09%. Page 2, expenditures are at 65.21% at 83.33% of the year. Page 3 are charts that compare the year-to-date revenue and expenditure for both operating and capital to the budget. Page 4 and 5 gives a brief explanation of the funds that are highlighted on page 1 and 2 that are under the budget for revenues or over the budget for expenditures by 5% or more. And the last page reflects checks issued in October that were over $100,000, and the total of the checks were $3,107,747.47. Once you review the report, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Ms. Amanda. Item number 18, bid items to the lowest responsive bid. Ms. Jones.
Good evening. On October 19, 2017, the Purchasing Department received 2 quotes for exterior lighting repairs at the governmental complex on Worthy Road. After review, the Facility Maintenance Department recommends accepting the lowest responsive quote submitted by Rescom Electric and to authorize the parish president to enter into any applicable agreement or contract for this project.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Councilman Satterly, a second by Councilman Lawler. Any questions? Mr. Lambert has a question.
Yeah, Parish President, Mr. Kim, this is repairs already on this new building? I'm just questioning it. Huh?
It just, when we actually did the new complex, there were some old lamp posts that were left out there from the old hospital.
So it's outside lighting?
So, yeah, so it's also, that's
Pole
what,
lighting.
yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So I have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes.
On September 21st, 2017, the Purchasing Department received 3 bids for bunker gear and accessories for Fire District Number 1. After review, the Fire Protection District Number 1 determined the bid submitted by AFCO and Bonaventure Fire and Safety to be non-responsive per the attached documents. The Fire Protection District Number 1 recommends accepting the lowest responsive bid submitted by BGS.
Motion.
A motion by Councilman Benny Johnson, a second by Councilman John Cagnolotti. Any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes.
On October 31st, 2017, the Purchasing Department received 2 proposals for a comprehensive plan, Master Land Use Plan 2. After review, the Non-Engineering Selection Committee and the Ascension Parish Planning Commission Chair recommend accepting the highest ranked proposal submitted by CPEX, and to authorize the parish president to enter into any applicable agreement or contract for this service.
So
And a
moved, Madam
note-
Chairman.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Cagnolati, a second by Mr. Lawler. Are there any questions? And I do want to mention that Ms. Boo Davis is here. And certainly, Boo, if you have any, if these gentlemen have any questions, they might want to direct them to you or to Mr. Fournier. Yes, Mr. Satterley.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Are there any dollars associated with this, or it's just picking the winner, so to speak, for the two applicants for this RF?
We already funded it. We already funded it.
Chairman, Mr. Sadlerly, excuse me, what was the question?
Are you asking me if there's a budget?
Yeah, there's no money associated with this. It's just picking the two people that applied.
Correct, it's the most
CPEX.
qualified firm.
Yes, sir, there is a budget. The budget is $450,000.
Which we have previously approved.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is just an engineering selection committee telling us, or a selection committee, I don't engineer, that this was the best of the two.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Fournier, any comments that you would like to make?
I have no comments. I do have Boo Thomas, who's the CAO of CPEX here. You have any questions, or she?
I
of
don't,
her,
but
she'd be
I
happy
always
to.
love to hear from Boo. So Boo, if you have any thoughts that you want to share with us about entering into this endeavor, we would welcome them.
I know it's late. Got it.
Well, they put you on the end of the agenda.
Thank you. It is such a pleasure to even be considered for this. I think that we are ecstatic to be able to do this for you, and if we are looking forward to moving forward. We feel like that we are eminently qualified. We've done such a good job according to Gonzalez and the work that we've done there, and we feel like that we've really gained the trust and feel that we have such a great working relationship with the leaders in Ascension Parish, which you all are, and we look forward to getting to know each of you. And if you have any questions, we feel that the time for this is right now. When you look at the amazing growth of Ascension Parish, and that you are doing a flood management plan and a transportation plan, there's a real need to go ahead and do the land use plan and tie all of that together. We have a very strong working relationship with your consultant for both of those teams, and we have worked very closely with them and have a very strong relationship. So we look forward to, if you move forward with this, to fulfilling and hopefully over-fulfilling everything that you hope to come out of this comprehensive plan for the parish of Ascension, and to preserve the fine quality of life you already have here. And I think that this plan would do that.
Thank you so much, Boo. It's wonderful to see you again.
Thank you.
Any questions, gentlemen?
Is there a motion and vote on this?
There will be in just 1 second.
I made the motion. He made the
All
motion
right.
already.
Yeah, there was, I'm sorry. There was. John Cagnolati made the motion, and Aaron Lawler seconded it, so we are open to questions.
I'm going to object, and I can either state, Madam Chairman, my reasons now, or after the vote, or during the vote, or, I mean, I voted against us, quite frankly, going out for a master plan, because it's my belief that we have one and this parish doesn't follow it. It seems to me that the Planning and Zoning Commission has indicated on multiple occasions, pointing their fingers at this council, that what we really need is to alter our traffic impact study language, which is in committee right now, as well as our drainage impact study language that's in the Land Development Code, because they need things that are specific, that master plan is just a guidance thing, and when it says things like inadequate infrastructure, it's not followed anyway. So I don't believe we need to spend another $500,000. This is nothing against is it Ms. Boo, your CPEX organization or anything like that, as much as it is. I believe master plans are wonderful if you follow them. We have a history of not being able to do that. I really wish we would have followed our master plan. We wouldn't have the infrastructure problems we have.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Any objections? Once, roll call, Madam Secretary.
Councilman Joseph?
Yes.
Councilman Dawson?
Yes.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Councilman Satterly?
No.
Councilman Dempsey Lambert?
Yes.
Councilman Todd Lambert?
Yes.
Councilman Kluwat?
Yes.
Councilman Lawler?
Yes.
Councilman Cagnolati?
Yes.
Councilman Johnson?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. And that motion passes. Thank you, Boo. Next,
On October 10th, 2017, the purchasing department received 4 bids for a Bullet Eclipse LDX thermal imager. After review, the Fire District Number 1 recommend accepting the lowest responsive bid submitted by BGS and authorize the parish president to enter into any applicable agreement or contract for this commodity.
have a motion by Councilman Dempsey Lambert, a second by Councilman Benny Johnson. Any questions?
Real quick,
Mr. Kulot?
Ms. Jones,
Yes, sir.
you basically had some non-responsive bids on this one?
O'Neill met with Fire District. The Fire Board actually reviewed the bids and made their recommendations. And their recommendation was that the other bids were non-responsive.
So it was basically on the bid out, it wasn't clear, O'Neill,
It was bid out. They compared the equipment to what they use now and what they need, and they felt that especially that some of these people are non-responsive to what they have. We rely on their expertise. We don't make that determination. We allow them.
Good deal, I just noticed it.
Yeah, we let them review these things because it's their expertise that we're relying on there.
Good deal, thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a motion and a second. Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes.
On November 9, 2017, the purchasing department received 2 bids for a EBS automatic sandbagging machine. After review, the Department of Public Works recommend accepting the lowest responsive bid submitted by Covington Sales and Service and to authorize the parish president to enter into any applicable agreement or contract for this commodity.
So moved.
I have a motion by Councilman Benny Johnson, a second by Councilman Todd Lambert. Any questions? Any objections? Hearing none, that motion passes. Before we adjourn, I thank everyone for their commitment to this evening. I know it's been long, but it is what it takes to get this work done, and I will do it next time in a special meeting.
Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion by Councilman Dempsey Lambert.
I'll second, and I have a quick note that we have a utilities meeting after here. We're gonna take a short 10-minute break, and then we'll carry on with the utilities committee.
Yeah, so we'll have a 10-minute break, and the Utilities Committee meeting will proceed after that time. Thank you all so much.